A deep hum vibrates through the earth, and a mountain of stone begins to crack. Could ancient civilizations have truly shattered rock with nothing but sound? From the crumbling walls of Jericho to the silent stones of forgotten temples, legends whisper of a lost science where music was a weapon and a chant could bring down a fortress. By the end of this journey, you will know the 25 most incredible sonic weapons ever imagined by our ancestors. We will explore if a biblical shout really leveled a city and how a monk's bowl might hold the secret to moving mountains. What forgotten power did ancient voices truly command? The story begins with one of the most famous collapses in history. According to the book of Joshua, the Israelite army faced the imposing, impenetrable walls of the ancient city of Jericho. Their strategy was not a battering ram or a siege tower, but a sound. For 6 days, priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant and 7 priests blowing ram's horns, known as shofars, marched once around the city in complete silence. On the 7th day, they circled it 7 times. Then, at a precise moment, the priests blew a long, thundering blast on the horns, and the entire army unleashed a single, unified shout. And the massive walls of Jericho, we are told, crumbled flat, allowing the army to walk straight in. This is the first and perhaps most iconic story of an ancient acoustic weapon. But could a shout and some horns really bring down a stone fortress? Modern acoustics offers a fascinating possibility. Every structure, from a wine glass to a skyscraper, has a natural resonant frequency. Hit that exact frequency with enough energy, and you can induce catastrophic vibrations. The theory suggests that the constant, rhythmic marching of thousands of people, combined with the deep, sustained blast of the shofars over 7 days, could have been probing for that frequency. The final, coordinated shout might have been the precise acoustic key that unlocked the wall's weakness, amplifying vibrations until the stone literally shook itself apart. Archaeologists have long debated the historical facts of Jericho's walls, with some evidence suggesting a violent destruction around the correct time period, possibly from an earthquake. This introduces another compelling layer. If seismic activity did bring the walls down, the event would have been preceded by a deep, groaning rumble from the earth itself. To ancient observers, the sound and the collapse would have been inseparable, forever cementing in legend the idea that sound alone held the power to shatter stone. The story of Jericho sets the stage, blending faith, physics, and folklore into a single, earth-shaking event. The legend of Jericho shows us sound as a blunt force, a city-shattering shout. But ancient engineers soon learned to refine that power, to shape and direct it with precision. This brings us to the second weapon in our list, a system hidden in plain sight within the very cradle of Western drama. Walk into the great theater of Epidaurus in Greece, a stone bowl carved into a hillside over 2,000 years ago. Even today, without any electronic amplification, a whisper from the center of the stage can be heard with perfect clarity in the highest back row, over 100 feet away. The architectural genius of the seating curvature is well known, but there is a more mysterious element. Roman architect Vitruvius wrote that Greek theaters often had large bronze or clay vases, carefully tuned to specific musical notes placed in cavities beneath the stone seats. These were not decorations, they were acoustic resonators designed to catch specific sound frequencies from the stage, vibrate in sympathy, and rebroadcast that sound with greater clarity and power into the audience. It was an ancient public address system, using the physics of resonance to make every word and note resonate with the crowd. But what if this technology of amplification could be weaponized? Consider the concept of acoustic gain. Just as a lens can focus scattered sunlight into a burning point, an array of tuned resonators could, in theory, focus scattered sound waves into a concentrated beam of acoustic energy. Now imagine those bronze vases beneath the seats of Epidaurus were not tuned to the gentle frequencies of a human voice, but to a deep, powerful, destructive tone. If a giant horn or a massive drum at the orchestra circle produced that precise frequency, the entire network of vases would activate in unison. Instead of gently amplifying a playwright's words, they could become a coordinated array of sonic lenses, focusing and projecting that destructive frequency to a single point in the theater, or perhaps even beyond its walls. The energy, instead of being dissipated, would be gathered and directed. The effect might not shatter a city wall, but could it crack a specific stone, disrupt an enemy's formation with a debilitating wave of sound, or even induce nausea and disorientation in a targeted group. Experiments with scale models have shown that such resonator arrays can dramatically boost and direct specific frequencies. While we have no historical record of these vases being used for war, their very existence proves that ancient architects were masters of manipulating sound with geometry and resonance. They built structures that could whisper across vast distances. The unsettling question remains, if they could make a whisper travel, what could they do with a roar? The theaters of Greece show us sound shaped by architecture, but what about sound shaped for conquest from the skies? Ancient Indian texts describe incredible flying machines called Vimanas, celestial chariots detailed in epics like the Mahabharata and in technical manuals like the Samarangana Sutradhara. These were not just mythical transports, they were described as sophisticated vehicles of war, equipped with an arsenal of advanced weapons. Among the most intriguing are the acoustic devices. One was called the Shabdavdi, a sound-targeting device. Another was the Gana, described as producing a dense, oppressive hum. The texts tell of these weapons being deployed not to create a massive explosion, but to induce a specific, controlled effect on the enemy below. A targeted hum from a Vimana could cause widespread confusion and paralysis among troops, rendering an army helpless without a single physical strike. It could also, according to some passages, vibrate the foundations of fortifications, causing towers to crack and collapse. This is a leap from the broad shout at Jericho to a precise aerial application of sonic force. The parallels to modern technology are startling. Today, devices like long-range acoustic devices, or LRAD, are used for crowd control and naval defense. They project a highly focused beam of intense sound that can cause pain, disorientation, and a powerful urge to flee. The principle is directed acoustic energy. The ancient descriptions of the Shabdavdi aiming a paralyzing tone at a specific target below mirrors this exact concept of a directed sonic beam. The Gana, with its dense, overwhelming hum, sounds like a weapon designed for area denial to create a zone of incapacitating vibration. Were these just poetic metaphors for the terror of an aerial attack, or did they preserve a memory of a lost science? The technical details in some texts discussing the construction of Vimanas from specific metals and their operation using mysterious energies suggest a layer of technological thought far beyond simple mythology. They present a vision where sound was not an accidental byproduct of battle, but a primary, tunable weapon launched from a platform high above the chaos, turning the very air into a battlefield. From the aerial hum of the Vimana, we descend into the silent, echoing heart of a stone mountain. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as a monument to precision, its interior chambers holding an acoustic secret just as compelling as its geometric perfection. Enter the king's chamber, a stark room built from immense blocks of granite. At its center sits the coffer, a massive sarcophagus cut from a single piece of even harder granite. For years, researchers have noted this room's strange sonic behavior. When you stand inside and speak or chant, the sound feels different. It is clearer, richer, almost as if the room itself is listening and responding. This is not an illusion. The dimensions of the chamber and the material of the coffer create a unique acoustic environment. experiments have shown that the chamber naturally resonates or amplifies specific low frequencies around 110 Hz. This is a deep, vibrational hum close to the lowest note a male voice can produce. When a sound matches a room's resonant frequency, it creates a standing wave, a pattern where the sound energy builds upon itself, becoming much more powerful and sustained. In the king's chamber, a sustained chant or the beat of a drum at that precise frequency would not just be heard, it would be felt, vibrating through the stone floor and up through your bones. This leads to a radical theory. What if this was not a burial chamber but a powerful acoustic device? Some researchers propose that trained priests, using chants, drums, or even tuned instruments like large horns, could have filled the chamber with these resonant standing waves. The granite coffer, acting not as a tomb but as a resonant amplifier, might have focused this vibrational energy. The purpose could have been spiritual, using the overwhelming physical sensation of sound to alter consciousness during rituals. But there is a more practical possibility. If such focused acoustic energy could be generated inside a confined space of stone, could a similar principle be applied on a larger scale? Imagine a smaller, portable version of this resonant chamber used at a quarry. If you could find the resonant frequency of a specific type of stone, and then bombard a section of the bedrock with that frequency using horns or chanting in a tuned enclosure, the vibrations might travel through the rock, creating stress points along natural crystalline lines. This could allow for remarkably clean cuts, explaining how ancient workers quarried and shaped massive granite blocks with such apparent ease. This idea connects to another Egyptian mystery, the so-called Dendera light. In a temple at Dendera, a relief shows what looks like a giant light bulb with a snake inside, connected to a box and a pillar. Mainstream archaeology interprets this as a symbolic depiction of a lotus flower and a snake representing creation. Yet, some alternative researchers see a different possibility. Could the bulb shape represent an acoustic resonator, a large ceramic or metal vessel designed to vibrate at a specific tone? The snake might symbolize the sound wave itself, and the box could be a drum or sound source. When sand is placed on a metal plate and vibrated at specific frequencies, it forms intricate geometric patterns called cymatic figures. The patterns change with the pitch. Is it possible the Dendera relief is a diagram of a device used to find the resonant frequency of materials, with the patterns in the sand revealing the perfect tone to make stone respond? While the light bulb interpretation is widely disputed, the concept of using resonance for practical stonework is grounded in physics we can test today. The silent stones of Egypt may have once hummed with a forgotten power, a technology that used the voice not to command people but to command the very mountains. The silent hum of the pyramid speaks to a deliberate science, but the myths of Greece reveal a more terrifying truth about sound: its power to enslave the mind itself. Our fifth and sixth entries are not machines or architectures, but living weapons born from legend, the sirens and the musician Orpheus. First, the sirens. These were not monsters with claws, but creatures whose weapon was pure, irresistible melody. Homer tells us their island was littered with the bones of sailors who, upon hearing their song, were so enchanted they steered their ships directly into the jagged rocks, drowning in their desperate attempt to reach the source. This is a profound metaphor for an acoustic weapon. It did not shatter stone with force, it shattered perception with beauty. The song bypassed logic, hijacking the will and turning a sailor's own hands against him. The destruction came not from the sound, but from the sound's command over human emotion and action. Now consider the eerie phenomenon of infrasound, sound waves too low for the human ear to consciously hear below 20 Hz. This inaudible vibration has been scientifically linked to feelings of intense dread, sorrow, and even visual hallucinations. It can cause disorientation and a deep, nameless anxiety. What if the myth of the siren's hypnotic call is a poetic description of an area saturated with powerful infrasound? emitted perhaps by wind channeling through sea caves in their island's cliffs. The sailors would not hear a melody, but they would feel an overwhelming, supernatural despair and urgency, clouding their judgment and compelling them toward the shore, where the audible crash of waves masked the true vibrational danger. The story encodes an ancient intuition that certain sounds, even unheard ones, can weaponize our own psychology. From this weapon of despair, we turn to its opposite, the ultimate weapon of harmony, the lyre of Orpheus. His music was so profoundly beautiful it could tame wild beasts, coax trees and stones to uproot themselves and follow him in a dance, and most famously, soften the hearts of the gods of the underworld to retrieve his lost love, Eurydice. Where the siren's song represents chaotic, destructive resonance, Orpheus's lyre represents ordered, constructive resonance. The idea that sound could literally move matter, making rocks dance, mirrors the modern study of cymatics, where sound frequencies shape sand into complex geometric patterns. At a high enough amplitude, sound can levitate small objects. The myth suggests a perfected understanding of vibrational sympathy, the idea that everything, living or not, has a natural frequency. Orpheus, the master musician, did not merely play notes. He found the fundamental frequency of the world around him and played in harmony with it. By matching the resonant frequency of stone or the rhythmic pulse of an animal's heart, his music created a bridge of vibration, a literal persuasion that compelled matter to move in concert with his will. His journey into Hades is the deepest allegory, portraying sound as a force that could reach into the land of death itself and stir emotion from the unmovable. Together, these two myths bookend the ancient Greek understanding of sound's dominion, from the psychological sabotage of the sirens to the physical and spiritual mastery of Orpheus. They ask us whether these are mere fantasies or distant, distorted echoes of a time when bards and priests knew how to tune their instruments not just to a scale, but to the hidden frequencies of the world itself. The lyre of Orpheus suggests a music that could move stone, but in the high monasteries of Tibet, that idea transforms into a living practice. Here, sound is not a weapon of war, but a tool for inner and outer transformation, using instruments that feel ancient and otherworldly. The seventh entry on our list takes us to these sacred spaces, to the massive ritual drums known as unga and the haunting metal singing bowls. These are far more than musical instruments. In Tibetan Buddhist tradition, they are technologies for meditation, designed to alter consciousness, and in esoteric teachings to affect the very fabric of reality. The unga is a huge drum, sometimes taller than a person, with a deep, head-sized striking surface. When played with a heavy, curved beater, it does not produce a sharp crack but a profound, rolling boom. This is a wave of pure, low-frequency vibration that you feel in your chest and your bones before you truly hear it with your ears. It is a sound that physically washes over you. Alongside it, the singing bowl, when its rim is rubbed with a wooden mallet, produces a sustained, shimmering tone that seems to contain multiple harmonies within a single note. This complex sound wave is said to align the mind and body, its vibrations promoting a deep state of calm and focus. Monks use these tools in lengthy ceremonies, the air thick with overlapping waves of low booms and high, crystalline harmonics. The purpose is spiritual, to clear psychic obstacles and create a sacred space. Yet the sheer physical power of the vibrations invites a practical question. What could such focused sonic energy do to solid matter? There are old anecdotes passed down through oral tradition of monks using coordinated chanting and the drone of long horns to help move massive stones during the construction of temples. The idea is not that the sound magically lifted the blocks, but that the precise, rhythmic vibrations reduced friction, making the incredibly heavy stones somehow easier to slide and position. This aligns with a fascinating bit of modern physics. Vibrations can indeed affect how objects interact with surfaces, a principle used in some industrial machinery to move materials smoothly. If the monks discovered, through centuries of sonic ritual, specific frequencies that resonated with the local stone, their ceremonies might have had a very tangible, physical effect alongside the spiritual one. The folklore goes further, speaking of masters who could use sound to levitate objects. While we have no proof of such feats, a simple experiment makes the concept feel less impossible. Place water in a singing bowl and set it vibrating. The water does not sit still. It erupts into a frantic, dancing pattern of standing waves and droplets that leap into the air, defying gravity for a moment, driven purely by the energy of the sound. If sound can so violently command a liquid, what might a vastly more powerful version of that vibration do to a solid? The rituals of Tibet present a vision where the boundary between spiritual vibration and physical force blurs, where a drumbeat is a prayer that also shakes the foundations of the world. From the meditative hum of Tibetan bowls, we cross into a world where sound announces the end of everything. In Norse mythology, the guardian god Heimdallr stands watch at the Bifrost, the shimmering rainbow bridge that connects our world to the realm of the gods. His weapon is not a sword or an axe, but a horn, the Gjallarhorn. Its name means the resounding horn, and its power is apocalyptic. The myths say Heimdallr will raise this horn and blow a single, shattering note to signal the beginning of Ragnarok, the final battle where gods will fall, the bridge will break, and the world will be consumed by fire and flood. This is not a sound that merely travels, it is a sound that penetrates every layer of reality, heard in all the 9 worlds at once. The Gjallarhorn is the ultimate acoustic weapon of myth, a herald whose blast does not just warn of destruction, it actively triggers it. The vibration of its call is so profound it begins the unmaking of cosmic order, shattering the very boundary between worlds as the Bifrost collapses. This symbolic link between a catastrophic sound and the breaking of a structure is deeply revealing. It suggests the ancient Norse understood sound as a fundamental force, capable of reaching a critical threshold where stability fails. But what real-world event could have inspired such a vivid myth of a world-ending blast? Consider the volcanic landscapes of Iceland and Scandinavia. A massive volcanic eruption produces a symphony of terrifying sounds: the initial explosion, the continuous roaring of the eruption column, and the deep, pervasive rumbling of the earth itself. These eruptions also generate powerful infrasound, waves of sound pressure too low for human ears to hear, but which travel for thousands of miles and can be felt as an unsettling vibration in the air and the ground. To a people living in the shadow of active volcanoes, a particularly violent eruption would have felt like the sky itself was tearing apart, preceded and accompanied by an all-encompassing, inaudible dread. The myth of the Gjallarhorn could be a poetic encoding of this experience, transforming the incomprehensible power of a geologic catastrophe into a divine instrument. The horn's sound breaking the Bifrost might parallel the way the shockwaves from an eruption can shatter ice sheets, causing colossal calving events where mountains of ice collapse into the sea with a thunderous roar. In this view, Heimdallr's horn is not fantasy, but a profound metaphor. It represents the moment when natural sound crosses a line from phenomenon to weapon, when the very vibrations in the air become capable of breaking the solid world. It is the memory of a time when the sky screamed and the earth answered, forever linking the concept of an ultimate sound with the end of all things. The apocalyptic blast of the Gjallarhorn speaks of a sound that unmakes worlds, but another lost civilization is said to have built its world with the Song of Crystals. The legend of Atlantis, first recorded by Plato, tells of a magnificent island empire that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night. While Plato framed it as a moral parable, later writers like Ignatius Donnelly in the 19th century reimagined Atlantis as a technologically advanced superpower. In these speculative visions, the Atlanteans did not just build with stone, they commanded the very elements, and at the heart of their power were immense, glowing crystals. Could these legendary crystals have been more than just light sources? Could they have been the ninth weapon on our list, acoustic devices of unimaginable power? The theory hinges on a real scientific property. Certain crystals, like quartz, exhibit piezoelectricity. This means when you apply physical pressure or vibration to the crystal, it generates a small electrical charge. The reverse is also true. Apply an electric charge, and the crystal vibrates at a very precise frequency. This is why tiny quartz crystals are in every modern watch and computer, keeping perfect time through their steady, microscopic oscillations. Now scale that principle up to the size of a monolith. Imagine an Atlantean power source, perhaps geothermal or hydraulic, channeling energy into a massive, carefully cut quartz crystal array. The crystal would not just glow, it would hum, vibrating with a deep, fundamental tone. If that tone could be focused and directed, perhaps through parabolic reflectors or other crystalline lenses, it might project a beam of coherent acoustic energy, a sonic laser. Such a beam, tuned to the resonant frequency of granite or limestone, could theoretically slice through stone with clean, precise cuts, explaining the megalithic precision attributed to lost civilizations. For warfare, the same principle could be horrifying. A focused sonic beam from a coastal crystal tower could vibrate the hull of an invading ship, shaking it apart at its seams before it ever reached shore. The legends often describe the final destruction of Atlantis as a cataclysm of earthquakes and floods. If their civilization was powered by a vast, unstable crystal energy grid, a catastrophic failure could have generated a cascading harmonic resonance. The crystals, instead of singing in harmony, might have begun to shriek, their vibrations amplifying through the bedrock until the entire island continent fractured from within. The sinking would not have been a quiet submersion, but a deafening chorus of breaking stone and screaming crystal, a final, fatal feedback loop of their own acoustic technology. While firmly in the realm of pseudoscience, the enduring image of Atlantean crystal power taps into a deep human intuition that the Earth's bones, its stones and crystals, hold a latent energy waiting to be awakened by the right frequency, the right song. The crystal song of Atlantis speaks of a lost technological harmony, but across the ocean, another civilization weaponized sound in a far more visceral and terrifying way. For the Aztec warriors of Mesoamerica, battle was a symphony of fear, and every instrument had its part. The 10th weapon in our exploration is not a single device, but a devastating acoustic arsenal, led by the collective roar of the army itself. At the heart of their ceremonial sound was the chicahuastli, a long wooden rattle filled with pebbles or seeds. Its primary purpose was ritual, shaken to mimic the sound of rain and call upon the gods for life-giving water. But imagine that same rattling sound, not in a temple, but multiplied by hundreds on a dusty battlefield. The effect would be a constant, shushing, chaotic backdrop, a psychological static meant to disrupt enemy concentration and signal the relentless approach of Aztec forces. Yet, this was merely the whisper before the scream. The true acoustic weapons were the thunderous huhutel, the massive vertical war drums carved from tree trunks, and the terrifying collective cry known as the Tlaquetzalistli. When the huhutel was struck with heavy, padded mallets, it did not produce a simple beat. It generated a deep, resonant boom that traveled through the ground as much as the air, a sound felt in the chest before it was heard by the ears. This drum was the heartbeat of the army, setting a relentless, hypnotic rhythm for advance, and then came the cry. The Tlaquetzalistli was not a disorganized shout. It was a unified, rhythmic roar from thousands of trained warriors, synchronized with the pounding of the drums. Historical accounts from Spanish conquistadors, though biased, describe the sound as utterly horrifying, a wave of noise that seemed to come from the earth itself, designed to shatter enemy morale before the first spear was thrown. This is acoustic warfare in its purest psychological form, but let us push the idea further into the realm of physical vibration. Modern studies of crowd dynamics show that when large groups move or chant in unison, they can generate measurable low-frequency vibrations. The famous stomping feet of fans in a stadium can sometimes make the entire structure tremble. Now, scale that concept to an Aztec army of tens of thousands, all chanting the same deep-throated cry in perfect time with the pounding of dozens of massive huhutal drums. The combined acoustic output could have created a powerful, sustained low-frequency wave. While likely not strong enough to crumble a stone pyramid, such a directed vibrational field might have had subtle physical effects. Could it have made the very ground feel unstable under the feet of opposing troops, adding a literal sense of the earth shaking to their metaphorical terror? Might it have caused lightweight enemy structures like woven reed banners or temporary wooden palisades to vibrate and rattle ominously, enhancing the illusion of an approaching natural force? The Aztecs mastered the psychology of sound, using it to turn an army into a single, roaring entity that attacked the mind first. Their battlefield was not silent, it was a cacophony carefully composed to paralyze with dread, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon is not the one that breaks bones, but the one that breaks the will to fight. The battlefield roar of the Aztec army weaponized fear, but in the quiet mountains of Greece, a more intimate and terrifying sound was cultivated, the voice of a god speaking through stone. Deep within the temple of Apollo at Delphi, the most famous oracle of the ancient world, a priestess known as the Pythia would sit on a tripod over a chasm in the earth. Fumes rising from this crack, now believed to be ethylene gas from a geologic fault, would send her into a trance, and her ravings would be interpreted by priests as the prophecies of Apollo. The intoxicating vapors are the famous part of the story, but they are only half the mystery. The chamber itself was an acoustic device. Built into the slopes of Mount Parnassus, the inner sanctum was a small, enclosed space with stone walls that created a unique sonic environment. Any sound made within it, the Pythia's murmurs, the priest's questions, would be subject to strange echoes and resonances. The natural geology of the cave and the man-made architecture could have amplified certain frequencies, making whispers sound like distant booms and giving the priestess's voice an unearthly, multi-layered quality. This was not an accident, it was acoustic stagecraft designed to make the divine voice feel physically present, vibrating in the very air the supplicants breathed. But the concept goes deeper than one temple. At the Oracle of the Dead at Ephyra, a site dedicated to speaking with spirits, visitors would descend a long, dark corridor into an underground chamber. This architecture creates what is known as an infrasound generator. When wind blows across the entrance to such a subterranean space, it can produce very low-frequency sound waves, the same inaudible vibrations linked to feelings of dread, awe, and the sensation of a presence. Anyone standing in that chamber would not hear a ghost, they would feel one, a primal fear rising from their bones. These oracular sites were not just spiritual centers, they were ancient laboratories of resonance. The priests who operated them would have, over generations, become keen observers of how sound behaved in different rock formations and chambers. They learned which geometries made a whisper carry, which corners trapped and amplified a sigh, and how the earth itself could hum with the right atmospheric conditions. This knowledge of subterranean acoustics leads to a practical and profound possibility. If you understand how to make a cave resonate, could you learn to make it collapse? The principle of seismic resonance tells us that earthquakes send waves of vibration through bedrock at specific frequencies. If a structure or a natural formation shares that frequency, it will absorb the energy and shake itself apart. An oracle chamber built at a geologic fault line like Delphi was literally sitting on the Earth's acoustic weak point. The priests, by listening to the echoes in their sacred caves, might have been mapping the resonant signature of the rock itself. In a time of war, could that knowledge have been turned to defense? Imagine a scenario where an enemy army camped in a narrow valley known to amplify sound. If defenders, positioned in tunnels or on cliffs, used massive horns or drums to blast the valley's resonant frequency. They might not cause an avalanche, but they could induce a terrifying, ground-shaking rumble that felt like an impending earthquake, scattering the invaders in panic. Acoustic modeling of these ancient sites shows clear evidence of intentional sound manipulation. The maps are not just of sacred geography, but of vibrational hotspots. The oracles, in their quest to channel the voice of the gods, may have inadvertently mastered a science far more earthly, learning that the stone that whispered a prophecy could also, with the right tone, be taught to roar. The oracles learned to make the earth itself speak, but in Burma, a king sought to forge a voice for the heavens. The legend of the bell of King Damasdi is a story of faith, theft, and a sound lost to the river mud. In the 15th century, King Damasdi commissioned a bell of staggering size, a gift for the great Asachwadagon pagoda. Cast from bronze, it was said to weigh nearly 300 tons, a mass greater than 2 blue whales. For perspective, the largest functioning bell in the world today, Russia's Tsar bell, weighs just 200 tons and it has never been rung. Damasdi's bell was a colossus meant to be heard. Chronicles claim its voice carried for miles across the plains when struck, a deep, rolling tone that would have been less a note and more a physical event. The legend takes a tragic turn when, centuries later, a Portuguese adventurer and mercenary named Felipe de Brito attempted to steal the bell, intending to melt it down for cannons. As his men labored to haul it onto a raft on the Bago River, the raft capsized. The great bell slid into the deep silt where it is said to remain buried and silent. But let us consider the physics of that lost sound. A bell that size, struck with a massive log, would not produce a simple chime. It would generate a fundamental tone of extremely low frequency, perhaps only a few hertz, a sound wave so long it would be felt more than heard. This is the realm of infrasound. These waves travel vast distances with little loss of energy, passing through solid walls and even the ground itself. When such a wave encounters a structure like a pagoda or a city wall, it can make the entire edifice vibrate in sympathy. If that vibration matches the structure's resonant frequency, the energy begins to amplify, shaking stones loose from their mortar. This is not speculation. It is the same principle of resonance that can make a wine glass shatter with a singer's high note, but scaled to the volume of an earthquake. Had the bell been rung with malicious intent near a vulnerable fortress, the effect could have been catastrophic, not from an explosion, but from a sustained, bone-deep tremor that turned solid stone into a quivering mass. For the human body, the impact would be equally insidious. Prolonged exposure to powerful infrasound is known to cause disorientation, profound anxiety, nausea, and a sense of dread. An army camped within range of such a sonic assault would find their morale crumbling as quickly as the walls, besieged by an invisible force that shook the earth beneath their feet and turned their own bodies against them. The lost bell of King Damasdi represents a threshold, an object so massive its very voice crossed from ceremony into the domain of a natural disaster. Its legend asks us whether its sinking was merely an accident, or if the river itself swallowed a weapon too powerful for any warlord to command. The deep river mud swallowed a king's bell, but in the mountains of ancient China, the earth itself was thought to sing. Folklore speaks of dragon bones, mysterious fossils that would hum when the wind passed over them, a sign of the land's hidden spirit. Yet beyond myth, a practical acoustic science was likely at work. Miners and prospectors in ancient China developed incredibly sophisticated techniques for extracting metals and minerals, and some historians believe sound was one of their most crucial tools. Imagine a worker in a potential mining area, not with a modern drill but with a simple hammer. He would tap the rocky ground and listen intently to the echo. A dull, solid thud might indicate solid bedrock, but a sharper, hollow ring or a longer reverberation could signal a subsurface cavity or a rich vein of resonant ore. This is acoustic prospecting, using sound as a kind of geological sonar to map the unseen world below. It is a skill still practiced by some traditional stonemasons and well diggers today, an art of listening to the earth's reply. The advanced metallurgy of ancient China, which produced legendary cast bronze vessels and sharp steel swords, required vast quantities of precisely located ore. It seems improbable they would rely on chance alone. They may have systematized this listening, perhaps using standardized bronze plates or tuned mallets to produce consistent frequencies, creating an early form of seismic reflection survey. The tales of singing dragon bones could be a poetic memory of this practice, where a fossil-rich layer, being less dense, produced a distinctly different acoustic signature when struck. But what if this diagnostic tool could be turned into a weapon against the stone itself? If you can find a cavity by its echo, could you find a stone's weakness by its resonant frequency? Developed versions of this technique might have employed tuned vibrations to fracture rock in quarries and mines. We know the Chinese used fire setting, heating rock with fire, then dousing it with water to make it crack. What if they combined that with acoustic stress, by first finding the natural frequency of a granite block through careful tapping, then applying sustained sound waves from large, tuned gongs or horns during the heating and cooling process? The thermal stress could be guided and amplified. The sound would travel through the heated stone, focusing the fracturing energy along desired lines, allowing for cleaner breaks and the extraction of massive, precise blocks for monuments and fortifications. This concept of material harmonics, understanding that every substance has a note it naturally sings, aligns with the deep Chinese philosophical principles of balance and resonance between heaven, earth, and humanity. Their geomantic compasses, used to harmonize buildings with the landscape, considered unseen energies of the land. Perhaps the most skilled engineers understood these energies included vibrational pathways, the hidden songs of stone and metal waiting to be heard and ultimately commanded. The stones of Karnak stand in silent, marching rows, thousands of them stretching toward the horizon like a petrified army. At Stonehenge, the great trilithons form a broken circle under the open sky. For centuries, we have looked at these megaliths and asked what they point toward: the sun, the moon, the stars. But what if we have been asking the wrong question? What if the mystery is not in where they point, but in what they do to the very air between them? Modern acoustic archaeology has begun listening to these ancient sites, and what it hears is extraordinary. Researchers using sensitive microphones and sound generators have discovered that the spaces within these stone circles are not acoustically neutral. At Stonehenge, when the complete circle of sarsen stones still stood with its lintels intact, it likely created a contained sonic environment. Sound waves from a drum or a human voice would bounce between the hard, curved surfaces, creating a reverberation, a lingering echo that gives sound weight and presence. More intriguingly, specific spots within the circle seem to act as acoustic focal points, where certain frequencies are amplified, while other areas become quiet, dead zones. This is not random. The placement, spacing, and even the subtle shaping of the stones could have been used to tune the space like a giant instrument. The Karnak alignments, with their vast parallel rows, present a different acoustic phenomenon. Some experiments suggest the rows could have acted as a waveguide, channeling sound along their length with surprising clarity. A person speaking at one end could be heard far down the line, while someone standing just outside the rows might hear almost nothing. This creates a corridor of private sound, a sacred pathway where the voice of a ritual leader could travel as if by magic. So what was the purpose of this Neolithic sound engineering? The most compelling theory is ritual resonance. During ceremonies, coordinated chanting, clapping, or drumming by dozens or hundreds of participants would fill the stone enclosure. If the rhythm matched the natural resonant frequency of the space, a powerful standing wave would form. This is a stationary pattern of vibration where the acoustic energy builds upon itself, becoming intense and sustained. Within a standing wave, the air pressure oscillates between nodes of stillness and antinodes of extreme vibration. To be inside Stonehenge during such an event would be a transformative physical experience. You would not just hear the sound, you would feel it thrumming in your chest, vibrating the ground under your feet. The very air would seem to pulse and thicken. In this state, the boundary between individual and community, between human and stone, could dissolve. The legends of stones that dance or move might be a cultural memory of this phenomenon, where the intense, rhythmic vibration made the massive stones appear to shimmer or even momentarily seem to shift in the participants' altered states of consciousness. Could such sound go further, to the point of fracture, if the standing wave reached a sufficient amplitude, and if a stone within the circle had a hidden flaw or a resonant frequency that harmonized with the driving sound? The concentrated vibrational energy could, in theory, cause a crack. It would be a rare and likely unintended event, but to a Neolithic people, it would be the ultimate sign of the ritual's power, the moment the spirit within the stone was awakened and broke free. These sites were not silent observatories, they were resonant chambers built to harness the human voice and the drum's heartbeat, transforming them into a tangible, shaking force that could alter perception and perhaps, just perhaps, speak directly to the bones of the earth. The stones of Karnak held a sacred resonance, but the Roman legions weaponized sound for conquest. Their battlefields were orchestrated with precision, and the instruments of command became tools of terror. The curved bucina, the looping cornu, and the straight tuba were not mere signal horns. They were the nervous system of the army, blasting calls for advance, retreat, and formation shifts that cut through the chaos of combat. During a siege, however, their purpose transformed. The relentless, discordant blare of hundreds of these horns, combined with the rhythmic, thunderous clashing of swords on shields from thousands of men, created an unending wall of noise directed at a besieged city. This was psychological warfare, a calculated assault on the defender's nerves. Day and night, the cacophony would seep through the stone, denying sleep, fraying concentration, and constantly reminding those within the walls of the immense, disciplined force waiting to break through. The Romans were masters of practical engineering, building siege towers, battering rams, and catapults with ruthless efficiency. Yet their genius lay in synthesis, in combining tools for maximum effect. This leads to a compelling possibility. While their horns aimed at the mind, did their engineers also consider sound as a physical weapon against the stone itself? We know they used battering rams called eries, often housed in mobile sheds for protection. The standard tactic was a steady, rhythmic pounding against a gate or a weak point in a wall. Now consider the principle of forced resonance. If the operators of the ram could synchronize their strikes to the precise rhythm of a deep drum beat or a sustained horn blast, and if that external sound frequency matched the natural resonant frequency of the wall section they were attacking, the effect could be devastating. The sound waves would essentially ride on the physical impacts, causing the stone and mortar to vibrate with far greater amplitude. Each blow from the ram would be acoustically amplified, transferring energy more efficiently and accelerating structural fatigue. It would be like pushing a child on a swing, timing each shove to the peak of the arc, making the swing go higher and higher with less effort. The Romans were meticulous observers. Is it so hard to believe that over centuries of besieging countless cities, from Gaul to Judea, their engineers might have noticed that certain walls seemed to crack more quickly under a particular combination of assault? They might have conducted crude but effective experiments, using different drum cadences or horn notes during initial probing attacks, listening for a change in the sound of the impact or watching for dust to fall from new cracks. A relief carving or a passing comment in a military manual could be a clue we have overlooked. While no direct evidence survives of a formal Roman acoustic corps, their entire approach to war was one of adaptive technology. They absorbed and improved upon the techniques of every culture they conquered. If they encountered stories of walls falling to shouts or the strategic use of resonance in other traditions, they would not have dismissed it as superstition. They would have tested it. The relentless siege noise, therefore, may have served a dual purpose, a terrifying blanket of sound to break human spirit, layered over a targeted physical vibration to break stone. In the Roman mind, the separation between a psychological weapon and an engineering tool was likely very thin. The goal was victory by any means the world and the air itself could provide. The Roman siege was a symphony of force, but on the ancient continent of Australia, sound was woven into the very fabric of the land itself. The didgeridoo, a wind instrument carved by termites from a eucalyptus branch, produces one of the most primordial sounds on earth. It is not a melody of notes, but a continuous vibrational drone, a deep hum that seems to rise from the soil. To play it requires circular breathing, creating an unbroken stream of sound that can last for minutes, a sonic representation of eternity. This instrument is inseparable from the Aboriginal concept of songlines. These are not mere paths or tracks, but intricate maps of the continent sung into existence during the Dreamtime, the era of creation. Every hill, every waterhole, every rock formation is a verse in an epic song that stretches for thousands of miles. To walk a songline is to sing the country into being, to actively maintain the world through vibration. In this worldview, song does not describe reality, it creates and sustains it. The stories tell of ancestral beings who literally sang up the mountains, rivers, and deserts, their voices giving form to the formless. This is more than poetry. It suggests a profound, ancient intuition that the landscape itself is vibrational, that it has a frequency and can be interacted with through sound. The didgeridoo's drone, rich with complex overtones and harmonics, is believed to carry healing properties, realigning the body and spirit. But if sound can heal a person, could it, on a vast timescale, also interact with the land? Consider the phenomenon of acoustic resonance in geology. Seismic waves from distant earthquakes can make certain rock formations hum for days. The didgeridoo's fundamental frequency is incredibly low, often between 60 and 100 Hz, a range that overlaps with the natural resonant frequencies of many earth materials. When played for hours during ceremony, its vibrations travel through the player's body into the ground. The theory is not that a single player could shatter a cliff, but that sustained, generations-long ritual practice at sacred sites, places often chosen for their unique acoustic or geological properties, might create a subtle, cumulative vibrational interaction. Over centuries, could such focused, resonant sound subtly affect the erosion patterns of sandstone, encourage the flow of underground water by clearing fine sediment, or even stabilize a fragile rock shelf by consolidating the grains through gentle, constant vibration. It is a concept of acoustic stewardship, where the human voice and the drone of the didgeridoo are not weapons against the land, but partners in a perpetual, creative conversation. The songlines map a living, singing geography, and the didgeridoo provides the bass note, a deep, abiding hum that reminds the earth of its own ancient song. The deep hum of the didgeridoo connects a people to their land, but in the misty hills of ancient Britain, sound was a power reserved for kings. In the sprawling legends of King Arthur, Excalibur is the star, a blade pulled from stone to signify divine right. Yet hidden in older, lesser-known romances is another kind of weapon, one that speaks rather than cuts. Magical horns, like the horn of Bran the Blessed from Welsh mythology, appear in these tales. They are not for calling knights to feast, but for breaking sieges. One story tells of a horn so powerful its blast could crumble castle walls and scatter armies, a clear echo of the Jericho story transplanted into a Celtic world of enchantment. This idea connects to the profound, almost terrifying power attributed to the Celtic bard. In this tradition, a poet was not just an entertainer, he was a druid of words. His satire was feared as a literal weapon, believed to be able to raise physical blisters on the skin of a dishonorable king or curse a rival with misfortune. If a poet's scornful verse could affect the human body, what could a song of pure command do to stone? The legends suggest a belief that certain sounds, when uttered by a person of supreme authority or magical knowledge, could interact directly with the physical world. Now reconsider Excalibur in this sonic light. The sword in the stone is the ultimate test, but it is not the metal that is magical, it is the act of drawing it. In every version, the sword only moves for the rightful sovereign. What if that moment of release was not just physical strength, but an acoustic key? Imagine the stone as a resonant object sleeping for generations. The true king, by speaking his name or a command of power, strikes the precise frequency that unlocks the stone's grip. The sword isn't pulled, it is sung free. This transforms Excalibur from a simple blade into a symbol of sovereign vibration, a tool that channels the rightful ruler's voice into world-altering force. These Arthurian and Celtic motifs feel like fantastical romance, but they are likely cultural memories, preserving a time when the line between poetry, magic, and acoustic science was beautifully blurred. The bard who could blister with a verse and the horn that could shatter a wall are two sides of the same ancient coin, a deep-seated belief that sound, when properly focused by will and tradition, held a tangible power over both flesh and stone. It is the mythic echo of a truth we are still exploring, that the world vibrates and sometimes it listens. The Celtic horn that shattered walls is a legend, but the silent stones of the Andes present a mystery we can still touch. At sites like Sacsayhuaman above Cuzco, the Inca built fortifications from colossal, irregular blocks of granite, some weighing over 100 tons. These stones are not uniform rectangles, they are polygonal with complex, interlocking shapes boasting dozens of facets. Yet they fit together so perfectly that, centuries later, you cannot slide a piece of paper between them, all achieved without a single drop of mortar. How the conventional answers involve incredible skill, wooden rollers, earthen ramps, and thousands of laborers patiently grinding stone against stone. But a persistent, tantalizing legend whispers another possibility, our 18th ancient acoustic weapon, sonic levitation. The stories, often recounted by local guides as oral tradition passed down, suggest that Inca priests or master builders did not merely haul these giants. They sang to them, specific chants or songs, sometimes accompanied by drums or large instruments, were said to make the massive stones lose their weight, becoming light enough to be guided into place by hand. On the surface, it sounds like pure fantasy, yet when we examine the physics of movement and human coordination, a fascinating kernel of truth emerges. The concept is not magic, but acoustic lubrication. Imagine trying to push a heavy wardrobe across a carpet. It fights you with tremendous friction. Now place that same wardrobe on a layer of small, round bearings. It moves with startling ease. Vibration can act in a similar way. When a surface vibrates at a high frequency, it momentarily reduces the contact area between two objects, effectively creating a microscopic cushion of air. This principle is used in modern industry to move delicate materials smoothly. For the Inca, the source of that vibration might not have been a machine, but a coordinated human effort. Picture a massive stone block resting on a bed of smaller, rounded cobblestones, a known Inca technique. Now surround it with a team of 200 workers. Instead of a chaotic heave-ho, a rhythm master, perhaps a priest with a deep drum or a specific chant, sets a precise, driving beat. Every worker pushes or pulls in perfect unison with that rhythm. Their combined muscular force is no longer a series of sporadic jerks, but a continuous, vibrating wave of energy that travels through the stone. This synchronized vibration could have momentarily reduced the friction between the giant block and the cobbles beneath it, making it feel lighter and slide more readily with each collective push. The legendary chant was not an anti-gravity spell, but the metronome of supreme coordination, turning a mob into a single, living machine. The perfect fit of the stones might then be explained by a continuation of this sonic guidance. Once the block was near its destination, finer adjustments could be made using smaller, tuned vibrations. Tapping specific points with hard stone hammers while the block was under tension from ropes might send resonant waves through it, revealing by sound where high spots needed grinding. The stone itself would tell the workers where to work. The legends of sonic levitation, then, may be a profound cultural memory of this lost art of synchronized, resonant labor. It was not that the stones became weightless, but that the people, united by rhythm, became stronger than the sum of their parts, and the mountain for a moment yielded to their song. The Inca made mountains yield to rhythm, but in the final book of the Bible, sound becomes the instrument that unmakes creation itself. The 7 trumpets of the Apocalypse, sounded by angels in the book of Revelation, represent the 19th and most absolute acoustic weapon in our journey. This is not sound for conquest or construction, but for cosmic erasure. Each blast is a key turning in a divine lock, unleashing a specific, horrifying cataclysm upon the earth. The first trumpet brings hail and fire mixed with blood, burning up 1/3 of the world's trees and all the green grass. The second plunges a burning mountain into the sea, turning 1/3 of the waters to blood. The third sees a great star called wormwood fall from heaven and poison the rivers. The fourth darkens 1/3 of the sun, moon, and stars. The imagery is stark and sequential, a systematic dismantling of the natural order, each phase triggered by a distinct sonic command. This is the ultimate depiction of sound as a divine weapon of mass destruction, where a frequency does not just vibrate an object, but rewrites the laws of physics for an entire domain of reality. The trumpet blast is the word of God made manifest as vibration, a tone so pure and powerful it directly alters the fabric of the cosmos. This vision of apocalyptic sound seared itself into the Western imagination. For medieval and Renaissance thinkers, it reinforced the idea that sacred sound held terrifying, world-shaping power. It influenced the design of massive church bells, whose tolling was meant to echo the final judgment, and inspired artists for centuries. Paintings by masters like Albrecht Dürer and the brothers Hubert and Jan van Eyck depict the angels blowing their long, golden trumpets, while below, cities crumble, the seas boil, and humanity is thrown into chaos. The artwork captures the psychology of this sound. It is inescapable, arriving from a realm beyond human control, carrying with it both a message and the force of that message's execution. But where did such vivid, specific imagery come from? Could these visions have been rooted in traumatic human experiences of natural disasters? A massive earthquake is preceded and accompanied by a deep, groaning rumble from the bowels of the earth, a sound that feels like the planet itself screaming. The description of a burning mountain cast into the sea mirrors the catastrophic impact of a volcanic island eruption, with its deafening explosions and tsunamis. The star falling from heaven could correspond to a meteor or bolide, a fireball streaking across the sky that ends not with a silent impact, but with a thunderous sonic boom that shakes the ground and shatters windows for miles. To witnesses in the ancient world, these events were not geological or astronomical. They were the heavens and earth breaking apart. The connection between an ear-shattering sound and global-scale destruction would have been absolute. The Book of Revelation codified this link, transforming the memory of terrestrial trauma into a prophetic blueprint where sound is the primary trigger. The psychology is profound. The most profound fear is of a force that can be heard but not seen, understood, or stopped, a vibration that arrives from the sky and ends the world. The apocalyptic trumpets are the final argument for sound's ancient power, framing it not as a tool for kings or armies, but as the very voice of destiny, a frequency that can, with a single sustained note, bring the universe to its knees. A blade's ring in battle was more than just metal on metal, it was a voice. For the Vikings, the high, clear song of a sword when struck, what they called its emjöða, was believed to be the weapon's spirit speaking. This ringing tone was an omen, a sign of the blade's quality and its readiness for the fray. But the true masters of this acoustic battlefield were not the warriors with swords, they were the poets with words, the skalds. A skald's verses were not mere entertainment. They were spells woven from sound, capable of blessing a king's reign with glory or cursing an enemy with a fate as cold as the northern sea. This is our 20th ancient acoustic weapon, a form of sonic warfare that targeted the most fragile element of all, the human spirit and its belief in destiny. The skald's power resided in the very structure of Old Norse poetry, its relentless alliteration and driving meter. Listen to the rhythm of a line like "fell efjonda a efjölum," meaning foes fell on fells. The repetition of the F sound creates a percussive, hammering effect, a sonic patterning that feels inevitable and forceful. This was not an aesthetic choice, it was an incantation. The rhythm of the verse mirrored the rhythm of the forge, the march of boots, the beating of a heart in combat. By binding words together with these resonant sounds, the skald was attempting to bind reality itself, to make the events described in the poem as solid and true as the syllables that described them. In the heat of battle, a skald might chant a poem of victory, his voice rising above the clash of arms. The complex, interlocking patterns of his verse created a sonic shield of confidence for his side, a narrative of triumph spoken into existence. For the enemy, hearing those same resonant, foreign rhythms could feel like a curse settling upon them, a story of their doom being written in real time with every alliterative phrase. But could this belief in the power of patterned sound extend to the physical world of swords and armor? The concept of sympathetic vibration offers a fascinating possibility. If every object has a natural frequency it likes to sing, perhaps the Vikings believed a skald's chant, with its specific rhythms and tones, could resonate with the materials of war. A poem praising the strength of a chieftain's sword, recited in the right meter, might be thought to literally strengthen the blade by aligning its spirit, its emjöða, with the victorious sound. Conversely, a satire aimed at an enemy's shield, mocking its weakness in a sharp, staccato rhythm, could be intended to find and exploit the shield's resonant frequency, to make it vibrate in sympathy with the words of its own failure, weakening it before a blow even landed. We see this idea etched into rune stones, which often bear poetic inscriptions meant to last as long as the stone. The words are not just carved, they are positioned, their sounds forever part of the monument's power. The sword's song and the skald's verse were two parts of a single belief, that the world answered to the right frequency, whether wrung from steel or shaped from breath. In the Viking mind, the most devastating weapon was not the one that cut the deepest, but the one whose story was sung the loudest, for in the end, only the echoes of a great poem would outlast the silence of the grave. The skald's verse shaped fate with rhythm, but across the continent, another civilization mastered the art of sonic siege. The Persian karneh was a different kind of instrument, one built not for poetry but for sheer, overwhelming presence. Picture a long, straight trumpet, sometimes over 6 feet in length, flaring into a wide, bell-shaped mouth. Its voice was not a melody, but a deep, blaring roar that carried for miles across the open plains. In ceremony, it announced kings. In war, it heralded armies. When the Persian host laid siege to a city, the karneh was not sounded alone. It was part of a terrifying orchestra. Rows of these massive horns would blast in unison, their overlapping roars creating a dense, pulsating wall of low-frequency sound. This was layered with the thunderous, rhythmic pounding of the dohol, a large double-sided drum slung over the shoulder. The combined effect was a physical and psychological assault that began long before the first arrow was loosed. For the defenders trapped within stone walls, this noise was inescapable. Day after day, night after night, the deep drone and percussive thud would seep through the very stones, a constant reminder of the immense force gathered outside. It denied sleep, shattered concentration, and frayed nerves to a breaking point. This was acoustic terrorism, designed to erode the will to resist from the inside out. But could such a sustained barrage of sound do more than just terrify? Could it actually weaken the structures themselves? Modern engineering understands a principle called vibration fatigue. When any material, whether wood, metal, or stone, is subjected to repeated cycles of stress, microscopic cracks begin to form. Over time, these cracks grow, joining together until the material fails, even under a load it could normally bear. Think of bending a paperclip back and forth. It does not break on the first bend, but on the 10th or the 20th, because each cycle weakens the metal at a microscopic level. Now translate that to a besieged fortress. The deep, resonant blasts of the carnes and the pounding of the door holes are not just heard, they are felt. They send vibrations through the ground and the air, causing the wooden gates to tremble, the mortar between stones to subtly shift, and the very battlements to hum. A gate that has stood for decades might have hidden weaknesses, dried out timber or rusted iron brackets. The relentless, low-frequency vibration from the siege noise acts like an invisible hand, constantly working those weak points, bending them back and forth on a microscopic scale. Over weeks or months of a prolonged siege, this acoustic stress could hasten the failure of a wooden portcullis or cause existing cracks in a stone wall to slowly, inexorably widen. The defenders would not see the damage happening, but they might hear it, a new creak in the gate, a faint trickle of dust from a previously solid joint. The sound outside was not just a threat, it was an active, invisible sapper, mining the integrity of their defenses with every passing hour. Historical art from the region shows these instruments in military processions, their size and prominence underscoring their role as tools of power. Even today, the sound of a traditional carne carries a primal weight, a deep, visceral vibration that feels less like music and more like a force of nature. In the context of an ancient siege, that force was meticulously weaponized, turning the air itself into a slow, grinding millstone against which even stone could not hold forever. The Persian siege turned air into a grinding millstone, but in the jungles of Mesoamerica, sound was a plea to the heavens. The Mayan god Chok, depicted with a curling serpentine nose and eyes full of storm, did not merely bring rain, he was the storm. His weapon was a lightning axe, a crack of stone that split the sky, and the thunder that followed was his voice shaking the world. For a civilization dependent on maize and vulnerable to drought, capturing even a fraction of that power was a matter of survival. Priests did not just pray to Chok, they performed a sonic impersonation, using massive wooden drums, clapping together resonant stone slabs, and unleashing coordinated, thunderous shouts. They recreated the cacophony of a storm within their ceremonial plazas. This was sympathetic magic in its purest form, a belief that by creating the sound of the desired event, you could trigger the event itself. The ritual was an acoustic invitation, an attempt to persuade the god that the storm had already begun so he might join in. But what if these rituals were more than symbolic invitation? What if they were a deliberate harnessing of resonance using the very architecture of power? Consider El Castillo, the Great Step Pyramid at Chichen Itza. Its design is a celestial calendar in stone, but it is also an acoustic marvel. Clap your hands at the base of its grand staircase, and the echo does not return as a simple clap. It comes back as the distinct chirping cry of the sacred Quetzal bird, a fluttering sound engineered by the precise spacing and angle of the steps. This was no accident. It was a built-in sonic phenomenon, a permanent miracle woven into the pyramid's fabric. Now amplify that principle. Imagine a large-scale rain ritual taking place not just in front of the pyramid, but using it. If the priest's drums, stone clappers, and chants were tuned and positioned correctly, the entire facade of El Castillo could have acted as a giant parabolic reflector, catching the scattered sound waves and focusing them upward into the sky. The pyramid becomes more than a temple. It transforms into a colossal acoustic horn, projecting the simulated thunder of Chok with amplified force. The goal was rain, but the memory of such power lingers in myth as something more violent. The legends speak of Chok's axe not just bringing life-giving water, but splitting the sky and cracking the earth. Could these phrases be a cultural memory of the ritual's terrifying potential? If a focused column of sound, generated by hundreds of participants and channeled by the pyramid's geometry, reached a sufficient intensity, what might it do? We know infrasound can travel vast distances and affect the atmosphere. A powerful, upward-directed acoustic beam might theoretically influence cloud formation or even encourage electrical activity, making a lightning strike more likely nearby, fulfilling the prophecy of the god's axe in a terrifyingly literal way. On a more immediate physical level, such concentrated sonic energy directed at the limestone bedrock could, in theory, find and exploit fissures. A deep, sustained, resonant tone might travel through the porous stone, vibrating hidden water channels or even causing small, localized fractures that released long-trapped springs. To a people watching a drought-baked plaza, a new fissure weeping water after days of thunderous ritual would be a miracle, proof that their sounds had indeed cracked the earth and summoned Chok's gift. The line between ritual and technology blurs where the pyramid is both altar and instrument, and the priests are both supplicants and engineers, conducting a symphony meant to command the weather itself. Chok's thunder was a prayer to the heavens, but in the harbors of ancient Alexandria, an engineer turned water and air into a symphony of pure mechanical power. The hydraules, invented by Ctesibius in the 3rd century before the Common Era, was a marvel, the world's first keyboard instrument. It used the steady pressure of a column of water to regulate air pumped into a series of bronze pipes, allowing a single musician to produce a continuous, powerful blast of sound that could fill an entire amphitheater. This was not the gentle breath of a flute, it was the commanding voice of compressed air, a sound of civilization and control. We have mosaics showing it played at games and festivals, a symbol of Hellenistic ingenuity. Yet, the mind of a military commander hearing that sustained, overwhelming tone might have seen a different potential entirely. What if this instrument of pleasure was scaled into a weapon of naval terror? Imagine a warship, a massive Roman quinquereme or a Greek trireme, refitted not with an additional bank of oars, but with a fortified platform amidships. Upon it sits a hydraulis of monstrous proportions, its pipes not delicate reeds but thick bronze tubes the height of a man, all connected to a vast water chamber and pumps operated by a team of sailors. This is not for entertainment. When the enemy fleet draws near, the crew begins to work the pumps. The organist, more a weapon master than a musician, places his hands on the keys. He does not play a melody, he depresses every key in a massive, discordant cluster, unleashing a solid wall of sound. The effect would be unlike anything in ancient warfare. Instead of the sporadic blare of a few war horns, the enemy would face a continuous, deafening roar, a sonic foghorn that drowned out all commands and shattered concentration. The psychological assault alone would be crippling, sowing chaos on decks where coordinated rowing and maneuvering meant life or death. But could such a device do more than terrify? The hydraulis was fundamentally a machine of pressurized air. A scaled-up version could generate tremendous air pressure, firing pulses of concentrated sound with physical force. The low frequencies produced by its largest pipes would be felt as much as heard, a deep thrumming that traveled through the wooden hulls of nearby ships. At close range, could this vibrational barrage loosen the mortise and tenon joints of an enemy hull, or vibrate the tension out of crucial rigging lines, leaving sails slack at a critical moment? Modern studies show that high-intensity, low-frequency sound can cause materials to fatigue. The relentless sonic pounding from a war organ might not splinter a hull outright, but it could weaken the structure, making it more vulnerable to the final, physical shock of the ram. The Romans, pragmatic adopters of all useful technology, were certainly aware of the hydraulis. While no historical record mentions its use in battle, the leap from concept to application is a short one for a culture that built siege engines with the same ingenuity as aqueducts. A naval hydraulis would be the ultimate expression of acoustic dominance, turning the very air over the waves into a weapon. It transforms the warship from a silent, approaching predator into a screaming, audible leviathan, announcing its arrival not with quiet menace, but with a mechanical roar that promised the battle had already begun, and it was being fought on a frequency that shattered nerve and wood alike. The war organ roared with mechanical force, but in the silent tombs of Egypt, a different kind of sound was meant to echo for eternity. There, archaeologists have sometimes uncovered mummies with a truly haunting expression, their jaws wrenched open in a perpetual, silent scream. The scientific explanation is often practical, a result of the head falling back after death or the tightening of bandages during desiccation. Yet this eerie image collides powerfully with one of Egypt's most sacred rituals, the opening of the mouth ceremony. This was not a morbid accident, but a deliberate sonic act of resurrection. Before entombment, a priest would touch the mummy's mouth with a ceremonial adze, a blade-shaped tool, while chanting specific spells. The purpose was to restore the deceased's senses, to allow them to see, hear, taste, and speak again in the afterlife. It was a ritual of reanimation conducted through prescribed sound and gesture. The chants themselves were considered hekau, words of power. These were not mere descriptions, they were vibrations believed to carry inherent creative force. To speak the correct hekau in the correct tone was to perform an act to command reality at its most fundamental level. In the context of the ceremony, the sound waves from the priest's voice, focused by the ritual tool, were thought to physically unlock the mummy's sensory organs, breaking the bonds of death silence. This belief in the literal, physical power of uttered sound invites a staggering possibility. If a ritual chant could theoretically restore function to a body, could an extreme, focused application of hekau break other kinds of bonds? The Egyptians built for eternity, their monuments a defiance of decay. What if the priests and engineers believed that the same vibrational principles that could open a mouth in the underworld could also be directed at the stone of this world? The concept moves from the symbolic to the potentially literal. Granite, like a mummy's jaw, is a structure held together by bonds, in this case the crystalline bonds between mineral particles. The ritual tools used in the opening of the mouth were made of meteoric iron, a material from the heavens chosen for its symbolic power. Could such tools, when struck or used in concert with a powerfully chanted hekau, be thought to transmit a divine frequency into the stone? The goal would not be to crumble it to dust, but to command it, to persuade its bonds to separate along a perfect, clean line. The mummy's screaming mouth is a frozen moment of transition, caught between silence and speech, between inert matter and living spirit. It stands as a permanent metaphor for the ancient Egyptian conviction that sound was the key that could turn matter from one state to another. In their quest to conquer death, they may have honed a philosophy of vibration so profound that it suggested a terrifying truth, that the right word, spoken with the right authority, could make even a mountain listen and then obey. The mummy's silent scream was a plea for sound to conquer death, but the oldest stories of all speak of a sound that conquered nothingness itself. This brings us to the final and most profound concept in our journey, the 25th ancient acoustic weapon, which is not a weapon at all in the common sense, but the original creative force. Across the globe, the birth of the universe is described not as an explosion of light, but as an eruption of sound. In the Hindu tradition, the concept is not a Brahma, the world as sound. The universe is the manifestation of a primordial vibration, a single, eternal note that is the source of all matter and consciousness. The sacred syllable Om is considered the audible form of this vibration, a sound that contains the past, present, and future within its resonance. Far to the north, the Norse envisioned Yggdrasil, the world tree, its roots and branches holding the 9 realms together. But a tree does not grow in silence. The myths whisper of the well of fate at its roots and the eagle at its crown, suggesting a flow of energy, a hum of existence that sustains the entire cosmic structure. Even the Abrahamic tradition opens with a sonic act. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Creation begins not with a gesture, but with a spoken command, a frequency that imposes order upon the formless void. These are not mere metaphors. They represent humanity's most ancient and intuitive understanding of physics, that vibration is the fundamental state of all things. At the quantum level, the particles that make up atoms are not static points, but vibrating strings of energy. The entire cosmos hums with the afterglow of the Big Bang, a microwave background radiation that is essentially the fading echo of the first sound, a deep bass note stretched across the expanse of space and time. So what does this have to do with weapons that shatter stone? Everything. If the universe itself is a vibration, then matter is simply sound made solid. A mountain, a block of granite, a city wall, these are all frozen music, harmonies that have condensed into physical form. The legends we have explored, from the shout at Jericho to the chants in the pyramid, can be seen as fractured human attempts to remember this truth. They are efforts to find the right note, the correct frequency that would resonate with the frozen song of the stone and persuade it to change its state, to crack, to move, to yield. The ancient master builders and mystic warriors were not trying to invent a new power. They were trying to tap into the oldest power there is, the original frequency that spun galaxies from chaos. When a monk's bowl makes water dance, or a skald's verse seems to shape fate, or a priest's chant aims to open the mouth of the dead, they are performing small, localized acts of creation and uncreation, mimicking on a human scale what the first sound did on a cosmic one. The ultimate acoustic weapon is therefore the one used to build reality itself. Our entire journey through these 25 legends is a search for the echoes of that first word. The stories of sonic siege engines and resonant stones are the distant, garbled memories of a time when humanity may have understood, at some deep, instinctual level, that they lived in a universe woven from vibration. To speak was not just to communicate, it was to participate in the ongoing creation of the world. And if your voice could align with the fundamental hum of existence, then perhaps for a moment you could speak to the mountain and the mountain would answer. The universe hums with a fundamental vibration, and that hum holds the key to every legend we have explored. To understand how a shout might crumble a wall or a chant could move a mountain, we must listen to the science of resonance. Picture a child on a swing. If you push the swing randomly, it just wobbles, but if you push at the exact moment it reaches the peak of its arc, each small push adds energy, and the swing goes higher and higher with astonishing ease. This is mechanical resonance, a process where a small, repeated force applied at the perfect timing creates an enormous buildup of energy. Now, replace the swing with the crystalline structure of a wine glass. Every glass has a natural resonant frequency, a specific note it loves to sing. When an opera singer hits that exact pitch and sustains it, her voice pushes the glass molecules at the perfect moment in their natural vibration. Each sound wave adds a tiny bit more energy, amplifying the microscopic wobble until the glass can no longer hold itself together and it shatters. This is not magic, it is pure physics. And it does not apply only to delicate glass. Every solid object in the world, from a skyscraper to a granite cliff, has its own resonant frequency. If you can find that frequency and pump enough acoustic energy into it, you can, in theory, make anything shake itself apart. This is the hidden truth within the story of Jericho. The marching, the horns, the final shout were not random noise. They could have been a crude but effective search for the wall's resonant weak point, a sonic battering ram operating on a molecular level. But some of the most powerful sounds are the ones we cannot hear at all. Infrasound refers to sound waves with a frequency below 20 Hz, the lower limit of human hearing. While your ears do not register it, your body certainly does. These long, slow pressure waves travel through the air and the ground with little energy loss, passing through walls and hills as if they were not there. Exposure to strong infrasound causes documented physical effects, a sense of deep dread, disorientation, nausea, and even visual disturbances. It makes your organs vibrate and can trigger primal fear. This invisible force is all around us in nature. The rumble before an earthquake is rich in infrasound, a deep groan from the planet that animals often sense minutes before humans feel the shaking. The powerful winds around mountain peaks or through certain caverns can generate sustained infrasound, creating zones of unexplained anxiety. This science transforms the myth of the sirens or the dread at ancient oracles. A sailor approaching an island with sea caves channeling the wind might not hear a beautiful song, but he would feel an overwhelming, inexplicable terror compelling him toward the rocks, his mind crafting a melody to explain the unconscious panic in his bones. We have also witnessed resonance on a catastrophic scale in the modern era. The collapse of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in 1940 is a classic lesson. That day, a steady wind blowing across the bridge deck found its resonant frequency. The wind did not smash the bridge, it gently pushed it in rhythm, each oscillation feeding the next until the entire structure began to twist and heave violently, tearing itself to pieces. The wind was the singer and the bridge was the wine glass. Similarly, soldiers marching in lockstep across a bridge are ordered to break stride because the rhythmic impact of their feet could match the bridge's frequency and create a dangerous resonance. These events prove that the principle is devastatingly real. So when ancient texts speak of a horn blast bringing down walls or monks using chant to guide stones, they may not have been describing fantasy, but recording a profound observation of natural law. They saw that certain sounds in certain places made the world tremble. Without our vocabulary of frequency and hertz, they explained it through the language of gods and magic. The legends are not wrong, they are simply the human mind trying to make sense of a vibrational truth it could feel but not yet measure. The stone itself remembers the song, we are only now learning how to listen. From the primordial hum of creation to the last trumpet of apocalypse, our journey has spanned continents and centuries. We have stood before the crumbling walls of Jericho, felt the deep resonance in the king's chamber, and heard the war horns of Persia shake the very air. We have followed the songlines of Australia and traced the rhythm that may have guided Inca stones into place. Each of these 25 legends, from the lyre of Orpheus to the silent scream of the mummy, tells a different part of the same profound story. Across every culture and epoch, humanity has held an unshakable instinct, a deep-seated belief that sound is a fundamental force capable of shaping, moving, and even shattering the physical world. These stories are not random fantasies. They are a collective memory, an ancient intuition about the vibrational nature of reality that we are only now, with our instruments and equations, beginning to fully confirm. The resonant frequency, the standing wave, the power of infrasound, these are not modern inventions. They are the hidden truths behind the myth, the science encoded in the saga. We may never uncover a literal sonic canon buried in the sands, but that almost misses the point. The real discovery is the pattern itself, the recurring echo that proves our ancestors were not just observers of the world but listeners. They understood that to speak was to participate in the ongoing creation of things, that the right frequency could converse with stone. So we are left with a question for our own age, surrounded by a constant digital noise. In our rush of beeps and notifications, have we become deaf to the transformative power of sound that our ancestors so deeply revered? What sonic legends from your own culture or travels have captured your imagination? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the echoes of history, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the world's greatest mysteries. And as you go about your day, take a moment to listen, not just hear, for the world still hums with ancient power, and the next great acoustic discovery might not be a weapon from the past, but a harmony we have yet to create.